So good afternoon once again to everyone, and for this presentation I will talk about how to reduce sedentary behaviors in the workplace. So I will first discuss what is sedentary behavior and how is it different from physical inactivity, and then provide some evidence-based strategies to reduce sedentary behaviors at work. So before I start my presentation, allow me to invite you to do some exercises. So if you are sitting down while watching this presentation, I invite you to choose any of the exercises shown in your screen and do any of those exercises for 5 to 10 times to break up your sitting time. If you choose to do the shoulder shrugs, the one on your left, simply sit tall on your seat or stand up if you like, and then lift your shoulders up towards your ears as you inhale, and then bring your shoulders down away from your ears as you exhale. Inhale, shoulders up, and then exhale, shoulders down. Now repeat that 10 times. And if you choose to do the twist, sit towards the front edge or front end of your seat, making sure that your hips are tilted slightly forward so that you almost feel your sit bones on your seat. Make your feet or place your feet on the floor with your feet firmly grounded, with your feet slightly hip width apart or a little bit wider if you like, as long as you feel stable. Now place your arms in front of each other and in front of you, and then take a deep breath in, and then on your exhalation gently twist your torso towards the right or left, and then inhale back to center, and then exhale to the other side. So this is one round. Inhale again to center, exhale to the opposite side, inhale to center, and then exhale to the opposite side. Now inhale back to center, and then do that 3 more times to complete 5 rounds. Just make sure that you are really mindful about your movement to make sure that you're not straining too much, and you're simply working towards your healthy range of motion. And then finally, if you choose to do the standing squats or chair squats, again sit towards the front end of your seat with your feet firmly grounded, and then feet about hip width apart. Okay, so you can cross your arms in front of you like this, or the one you see in the picture, or you can place it by your side. Take a deep breath in as you prepare, and on the exhalation, slowly stand up. Inhale, stay there in standing position. Then as you exhale, slowly return back to your seat, lowering your buttocks down towards the seat. Inhale again to prepare, and on the exhalation, slowly stand up until you're in a standing position. Inhale again, then exhale slowly as you down. So again, do it 5 to 10 rounds. And then doing 5 to 10 rounds of any of those exercises will take about 30 seconds to 1 minute of your time, and that's already enough to break up your sitting time. Okay, so how do you feel now? Energized, I hope, and not too tired. All right, so why do we need to do this? So consider the amount of time you sit each day. When you go to work in the morning, how much time do you spend sitting? When we arrive at work and start our routine, how much time do we sit behind the desk and work with our computers? When we have meetings, how much time do we spend sitting down? When we have our lunch or merienda breaks, how much time do you spend sitting? When you finally go home at the end of the day, how much time do you spend sitting during our commute or drive? When we get home, do we lie down and sit down to relax either by watching TV or reading a book? For how long do we remain in this position? So without a doubt, we spend a lot of time sitting, and there is an increasing evidence saying that prolonged sitting can be detrimental to our health. It is now recognized as a major public health concern. So according to the June 2023 Philippine Labor Force Survey, a typical Filipino worker works for about 40 hours per week. So do you remember this slide? This is the one I presented earlier in my first presentation. So we will now focus our attention on what we call sedentary behaviors, or those activities that we do while we are awake but requires very little energy. So these are the types of activities that most of us, office workers at least, do during our work time. So Sedentary behaviors are those activities that we do while sitting or lying down, requiring very little energy. So examples of these activities include lying down and scrolling through social media using our mobile phones or small tablets, sitting on a chair and reading our favorite book, or driving to and from work, and all again sitting behind the desk to work. So evidence suggests that the negative effect associated with sedentary behaviors are independent from being active or meeting the recommended amount of physical activity for health. So in adults, prolonged bouts of sedentary behaviors are associated with poor health outcomes, including all-cause mortality, cardiovascular risk mortality, cancer mortality, and incidence of cardiovascular risk, cancer, and type 2 diabetes. So we may be physically active, meaning we meet the minimum recommendation of 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity per week, but this does not reduce the health risks associated with prolonged sitting behaviors or long periods of sedentary behaviors. So primarily because bouts of moderate physical activity typically occur only once a day. Okay, so for example, if we walk for 60 minutes every morning, but spend the rest of the day sitting for a long periods of time, we're actually still at risk of the prolonged sedentary behavior. So research on sedentary behaviors is relatively new compared to physical activity, but preliminary evidence has shown that the relative risk of developing depression or depressive symptoms are higher amongst those who engage in higher levels of sedentary behaviors. And one study also suggests that sedentary behaviors may negatively affect mood independent of physical activity. So what is the recommendations regarding sedentary behaviors? Actually, it was the first time in years that the WHO has included a recommendation for decreasing sedentary behavior in the WHO global recommendations for physical activity and sedentary behaviors. So it is recommended in that document that adults should limit the amount of time spent being sedentary in addition to engaging in at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity per week. So the recommendation also indicates that we should replace sedentary time with physical activity of any intensity for health benefits. So to clarify, if you look at this slide, okay, so sedentary behaviors include prolonged sitting or lying down or in a recumbent position or nakasandal for extended periods of time. Okay, so physical activity or physical inactivity, on the other hand, is insufficient levels of physical activity or not meeting the recommendations. So here we can see the difference. Okay, so think about this. What type of person are you? So are you physically active and not sedentary, meaning you meet the physical activity guidelines and spend less than 2 hours sitting continuously per day? So basically breaking up your sitting time every 2 hours or so. Physically active but sedentary, meaning you do exercise for at least 1 hour a day or 150 minutes of total exercise per week, but spend 8 hours or more than 2 hours of prolonged sitting during your work days. I'm actually guilty of this one sometimes. Or are you physically inactive but not sedentary, meaning that you don't meet the guidelines, you don't accumulate 150 minutes of physical activity per week, of moderate intensity physical activity per week, but you try to always stand up every hour or so while at work. Okay, so while this may have some health benefits, it's actually not enough. Or you can be physically inactive and sedentary at the same time, so not meeting global guidelines and spending more than 2 hours per day in prolonged sitting behaviors. So people who are in this category are actually of greater risk of developing health issues. Okay. So how can we break this up? Okay, so what are the strategies to reduce sedentary behaviors in the workplace, given that office workers spend 8 hours a day or 40 hours per week sitting behind a desk? So we can provide instructions on how to perform certain exercises like the one I showed earlier. These are exercises that people can do behind the desk during work. So it sort of breaks up your sitting time. You don't just sit and work on your computer. You actually stand up, do some light exercises in between every hour or so. We can also provide social support by encouraging people to break up their sitting time. So, for example, if we have an office desk mate or an office worker sitting close to us, and we notice that they've been sitting there for more than 2 hours, we can actually tell them to, hey, why don't you stand up, or why don't we have a coffee break, and go to the pantry, stand up, walk a while, and then come back and have coffee while continuing our work. So that's one way to reduce sedentary behavior. We provide support to our coworkers, and in exchange, perhaps they will also do that to us. We can also create prompts and cues using gadgets. So I have a Fitbit or a activity monitoring devices, and actually that has a feature which prompts me to stand up every hour or so. You can also install timers in your computer, which you can use to prompt you that you've been sitting for long periods of time. Or you can also add objects to your work environment. So this is actually a very popular strategy to help employees break up their sitting time, at least in high-income countries. So they call this activity permissive workstations. So here they provide employees with sit-to-stand desks or workstations with treadmills or portable pedal machines to place under the desk. So by doing this, you sort of create your work environment so that you can have opportunities to be active and moving while at work. Okay? So, and then research actually has shown that a reduction of about 40 minutes of sedentary behaviors per day is achieved with these activity permissive workstations. So other features that perhaps we can add in the workplace include having visible, easily accessible, and visually appealing stairs, and amenities such as bike facilities. So in that way, we encourage actually our workers to use bike or walk in between buildings, or perhaps even going to work or going home. However, these strategies and workstations can be costly and might not be feasible given our limited government office budget. But we do have our computers, mobile phones, and other wearable devices, which is becoming popular nowadays. So we can actually use these devices to remind us to move and reduce our sitting time. So, prompting devices, what are these? We can use, again, as I said, we can use computers. There are now apps that you can use. For example, I've just recently learned about this Big Stretch computer software, so that you can install this in your Windows computer. If you have a Mac, you can have Awareness app. So these are all free and easy to use, and not too heavy in our computers. If we have programs in the office, we have a person who's in charge of our physical activity and well-being, then we can send emails every hour or so reminding people to exercise, or even just weekly reminders for people to break up their sitting times during work days. We can also use websites. So there are websites, for example, this Pomodoro.io, and actually there's also a Chrome extension called Break Timer, which you can install in your browser to remind you to move after sitting for longer periods of time, or after maybe 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And of course, text messages. If a person who's in charge of our office well-being, that person can send text messages every hour or so to remind people to move. And then, of course, we have our mobile apps, and most mobile apps have built-in timers which we can use to break up our sitting time. Okay, so and then other things that you can do to break up your sitting time is to do some exercises in your desk. So earlier I presented some exercises that you can do at your desk, and because sitting for extended periods of time can lead to health issues, incorporating these exercises all throughout your day is one strategy that you can do to break up your sitting time and add movements to your day. So So for final words, remember to take regular standing breaks, stretch and move around, and try to really limit the amount of time that we spend sitting throughout the day. The recommendation, or some authors recommend, to take 5-minute breaks every 55 minutes of sitting. Okay? We can also support our colleagues and ask our colleagues to join us, reminding each other to break our sitting time, perhaps schedule a standing meeting, or even walking meetings. This is one strategy that are being done abroad, but I'm not really sure how receptive are we with this strategy, given that it can be too hot outside or sometimes it's raining. So perhaps we can schedule an end of the day walking meetings so that we can be more active while being productive at the same time. So just remember to incorporate any movement throughout your day to reduce our sedentary behaviors in the office. So basically that's it. Thank you very much. So basically that's it, and thank you very much for listening.